Elon Musk destroys the TV host. The answer that shocked America. Live television. Millions of viewers watching. Emma Sinclair, a renowned host known for her sharp questions, faces off against Elon Musk in the most anticipated interview of the year. She had prepared meticulously, ready to corner the tech billionaire. But no one expected that. With just one response, Musk would not only counter her but completely turn the tables. And America was left stunned by what had just happened. Before diving into this intense exchange with Elon Musk, leave a comment if you're a fan of his. Under the bright studio lights, the set appeared like a modern battlefield, where every frame was designed to amplify the tension. The massive LED screen cast a cold blue glow onto the glass floor, creating an atmosphere that was both authoritative and overwhelming. The audience sat in silence, waiting for what was about to unfold. A relentless showdown between one of the greatest minds of our time and a journalist famous for her unforgiving approach. This was no ordinary interview. This was a battle of words, where every question was a sharp blade, and every answer had the power to shape or shatter reputations. On one side stood Elon Musk, a visionary entrepreneur, a revolutionary in technology, but also one of the most controversial figures in the world. Opposite him was Emma Sinclair, a journalist renowned for her piercing questions, someone who had left countless politicians, billionaires, and high-profile personalities speechless on live television. Elon walked in, not rushed, not tense. He wore a simple suit, no tie, exuding a calm yet undeniable charisma. This was not a man who could be easily cornered. This was someone who always knew how to steer the game in his favor. Emma leaned slightly forward, her sharp gaze scanning him. She tapped lightly on the stack of documents on the glass table. A simple gesture that carried a deeper meaning. The battle had begun. "Mr. Musk," she began, her tone composed but edged with sharpness. "People call you a genius, a pioneer, but there are also those who believe you are going too far. That you are manipulating technology in ways that could be dangerous for society. So tell me the truth. Do you believe you have the power to determine the future of humanity?" The air froze. The audience held their breath. All eyes locked onto Elon. He did not rush to respond. A faint smile flickered at the corner of his lips, and his eyes gleamed with intrigue, as if this was just another chess game where he had already anticipated every move. And in that moment, everyone knew, the real game had just begun. A tense but electrifying atmosphere engulfed the studio. Elon Musk leaned back in his chair, his gaze calm, fingers idly tapping on the armrest. There was no sign of unease or defensiveness, only sharp observation. He was accustomed to interviews like this, and he understood very well that Emma Sinclair wasn't just asking a question. She was creating a challenge. He glanced briefly at the cameras broadcasting live, fully aware that millions were waiting for his response. Finally, he spoke, his voice steady yet thoughtful. "The word, control, sounds rather dramatic, doesn't it?" Emma's eyes flickered with a hint of intrigue. She enjoyed sharp conversations where her counterpart wasn't easily led. "So, what term do you think fits better?" Her tone was gentle, but the question was as sharp as a knife. Elon tilted his head slightly, the corner of his mouth curving, not quite into a smile, but something more, a sign of command. "I'd call it influence, but not the kind of influence that's forced or manipulative. When a useful technology emerges, people choose it willingly. They're not compelled to follow." A murmur spread through the audience. Emma recognized this as the perfect moment to push the conversation further. She leaned in slightly, her tone sharper. "But power, even when it comes from innovation, is still power. You're not just changing transportation, energy, or artificial intelligence. You also own media platforms. Some argue that your influence surpasses even that of world leaders. Doesn't that concern you?" The room seemed to freeze. This wasn't just a provocative question, it was a test. Elon didn't rush to answer. He quietly observed Emma for a moment before exhaling softly, as if weighing his words carefully. "That's an interesting perspective." He let the words hang in the air for a moment. Then, he leaned forward slightly, his eyes gleaming with sharpness. "So let's talk about responsibility." Emma gave a slight nod, an unspoken agreement for him to continue. Elon clasped his hands together, his voice steady but carrying weight. "If Tesla detects a technical flaw, we don't ignore it. We recall the cars immediately for repairs. If SpaceX encounters an issue, we don't cover it up, we openly analyze our mistakes, learn from them, and improve." He paused for a moment, allowing his words to sink into the minds of the audience. Then his gaze locked onto Emma. "But tell me, Emma, when a newspaper publishes false information, what happens? When the media distorts the truth, does anyone take responsibility?" A silent wave of reaction spread, subtle movements among the audience. Hushed whispers, exchanged glances filled with unspoken meaning. The balance of power had begun to shift. Emma Sinclair maintained her confident exterior, but a sharp glint flickered in her eyes. A fleeting moment, so quick it was nearly imperceptible. Yet it was there. She placed a hand on the stack of documents before her, fingers lightly tracing the edge of the paper, a gesture that seemed absent-minded but was laden with intent. She looked up, her voice calm yet carrying a hidden blade. "You're steering this conversation to your advantage, Elon." She leaned in slightly, her gaze razor-sharp. "But this isn't an interview for you to shape the narrative as you wish. This is about responsibility, about the future you are molding." She paused, letting her words settle before continuing, her voice now more deliberate. "So let's talk about artificial intelligence." She set her pen down on the table, a light movement yet weighted with significance. "OpenAI, Neuralink, xAI, companies you've founded or hold significant influence over. If AI reaches the level you yourself have warned about, if it surpasses human control, do you truly believe you are the best person to guide its course?" The atmosphere in the room seemed to tighten, a question simple on the surface, yet deeply probing. If answered poorly, Elon Musk could be perceived as an overly ambitious figure, or worse, someone unfit to be entrusted with the future. But instead of rushing to respond, Elon simply took a slow, deep breath in, then exhaled just as deliberately, measured and unhurried. Then he did something no one expected. He smiled. It wasn't just a reaction. It carried meaning, an unwavering confidence. The room fell into an eerie silence. Emma unconsciously tightened her grip on her pen, a small gesture, but enough for Elon to notice she was beginning to lose control of the exchange. He tilted his head slightly, the knowing curve of his lips remaining. "An interesting question, Emma, but I have a question of my own." He paused, letting the silence stretch, a psychological move. "Who do you think is truly worthy of leading AI's development?" The question landed back on the table, quiet yet piercing. It didn't just challenge Emma's argument, it forced her to consider the issue from another angle. A flicker of hesitation crossed her eyes, brief, subtle, but Elon caught it. He knew that sign all too well. Emma took a quiet breath, then leaned back, a movement meant to convey composure, but also a subtle adjustment to maintain balance. "This isn't about my opinion, Mr. Musk," she replied, her voice steady but carrying a hint more deliberation than before. "What matters is whether the public trusts you to make those decisions." The stage lights cast a glow around Elon Musk. He leaned back, crossing his arms over his chest, his expression as if carefully weighing each word he had just heard. Rather than rushing to respond, he simply nodded slightly, his gaze sweeping across the audience as if assessing their thoughts. "Trust." His voice was low, drawn out, leaving an echo lingering in the room. "That's the most important thing, isn't it?" He paused for a moment, then turned his gaze directly to Emma Sinclair. "But I want to ask you something. Why do people place their trust in me?" Emma didn't flinch. She sat upright, her sharp eyes like a finely honed blade. "Because you've created technologies that have changed the world," she answered, her tone calm yet resolute. "But achievements don't equate to absolutes. And they certainly don't mean you have the right to dictate the future of artificial intelligence." Elon's lips curved slightly into a knowing smile. Slowly, he leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "You're right, I'm not the only one with a voice," he acknowledged, pausing briefly before continuing. "But then who should be making the decisions? A bureaucratic committee? A group of officials who've never written a single line of code? Or people who only know AI through sensational headlines?" He glanced at the audience, carefully observing even the smallest reactions. "Do you believe the government would do a better job?" Murmurs spread through the rows of seats, the tension in the room growing thicker. Emma studied him, her expression unreadable, though her fingers unconsciously tightened around her pen. She kept her tone composed. But there was a sharper edge to it now. No one can fully control AI, she said, but it needs oversight, transparency. The public has the right to know in which direction AI is being developed. Elon tilted his head slightly, a flicker of intrigue in his eyes. Transparency? He repeated, as if testing the weight of the word. Are you suggesting a democratic system to oversee AI? Slowly, he stood up, taking a few measured steps toward the edge of the stage. Then let's do a small experiment, he said, his voice gentle yet carrying undeniable weight. In this room, how many people truly understand how a machine learning model works? How many can explain the self-optimization mechanism of AI? His gaze swept across the crowd. No one spoke. And among the millions out there watching this broadcast, he continued, how many truly have the knowledge to make the right decision about the future of AI? Silence enveloped the room. Elon paused, observing Emma's reaction, then gently shook his head and let out a quiet breath. And yet, you believe they should be the ones to determine the fate of this technology? The entire auditorium was gripped by tense silence. Eyes wavered, fingers unconsciously tightened around armrests, as if everyone could feel the weight of the question that had just been posed. On stage, Emma Sinclair maintained her composed demeanor. But behind that mask, she knew the balance was beginning to shift. Elon Musk remained standing there, his posture calm but his gaze sharp, like a man holding the game firmly in his hands. He did not rush to speak. Instead, he let the silence stretch, as if waiting for everyone to fully experience their own discomfort. Then, in a steady yet commanding voice, he spoke. I understand your concerns, and those of everyone here. He scanned the audience, pausing just long enough for his words to sink in. We are at a pivotal moment. Artificial intelligence is not just another new technology, it is reshaping how humans exist, work, and create. It is not merely a tool but an entity that can surpass every limit we have ever known. Elon took a step forward, his gaze fixed directly on Emma, his voice unwavering. And yet, you believe the media is the place where the most fair and objective discussion about this can take place? His words struck the room like a heavy blow. A few people shifted in their seats, as if suddenly realizing something they had never considered before. Emma could feel the pressure mounting, but she was not someone who yielded easily. Her voice remained sharp as she replied, Elon, the issue is not the media, it's responsibility. You can steer the conversation however you like. But the question remains, should a future controlled by AI be in the hands of a single individual? Elon tilted his head slightly, a faint smile playing at his lips, as if he were intrigued by the challenge. You think I'm avoiding the question? No, I'm clarifying its true nature. Emma didn't break eye contact, then get straight to the point. Elon raised a hand, his gesture calm yet deliberate, like a strategist positioning pieces on a political chessboard. Let's look at reality, he said, his voice slow but heavy with intent. If I were to declare that I should be the one leading AI, you would say I'm too arrogant, too ambitious, wouldn't you? He glanced at the audience, giving them a moment to reflect, then continued, but if I step back, if I say that I should have no role in this, then who will take my place? Governments? Bureaucratic systems that take decades to catch up with technology? Or the giant corporations? The ones who have optimized social media to control human attention rather than protect their interests? A few murmurs spread through the room, followed by light laughter, not out of amusement, but because they recognized a reality they had never truly considered before. Emma felt the momentum shifting in Musk's favor. She gripped the pen in her hand, not to write, but as a means to maintain focus. Elon took another slow step forward, his voice steady yet carrying a clear challenge. Then tell me, Emma, if I'm not the one making the decisions, who is worthy of doing so? For the first time that evening, Emma Sinclair did not respond immediately. She tilted her head slightly, her sharp gaze scanning Musk's composed expression, as if searching for a crack in his impenetrable armor. But instead of a man wavering, she saw someone unwavering, calm, coldly confident. The silence stretched, thickening the air in the auditorium as if everyone were holding their breath in anticipation. Under the stage lights, Emma tapped her finger lightly against the edge of the table, each movement measured, like she was contemplating her next move. Finally, she set down her stack of documents, her hands folding together in front of her. When she spoke, her voice was neither hurried nor impatient, but sharp, like a finely honed blade. "Mr. Musk, you say the world needs change, and that no one else can lead that change but you." She paused, her lips curling slightly into an incomplete smile. "But who gave you that right?" That question was not just for Musk. It was for everyone watching, for those who had always doubted him, for those who had placed him on a pedestal, and for those still undecided on whether he was a genius or an arrogant man. Musk slowly leaned back in his chair. A lesser man might have wavered under such pressure. But he did not. His eyes held a quiet steadiness, undisturbed by the challenge before him. He took a breath, his voice deep and firm, like the foundation of a skyscraper. "I do not believe that I have absolute power to decide the future." Emma's brow furrowed slightly. This was not the reaction she had expected. Musk leaned forward, his elbows resting on the table, his gaze sweeping across the audience as if speaking to everyone present. "Not just Emma. But I believe that if no one stands up to create a path, humanity will remain stagnant." He paused, allowing each word to sink into the atmosphere. "I am not the one who holds the fate of the world. I am merely the one who builds the bridges so that humanity can walk across on its own." The room seemed to tremble in silence. There was no need for applause, no need for cheers. The way every pair of eyes looked at him, with contemplation, with a hint of astonishment, and with respect, was enough to confirm that he had shifted the tide. Emma blinked, leaning back slightly in her chair. The game she thought she controlled was now slipping beyond her expectations. Musk had not only evaded the trap she had set, but he had also turned it into a platform to reinforce his position. And now, it was she who had to consider her next move. The stage lights cast long shadows over the two figures facing each other. Emma Sinclair, with the composure of a seasoned strategist, stood straight, her sharp gaze dissecting every corner of her opponent's mind. She narrowed her eyes, then spoke, slowly, but with an invisible force behind her words. "Mr. Musk, you say that technology is a tool for humanity to move forward. But have you ever asked yourself whether you're building bridges or digging graves?" The tension in the room escalated instantly. A simple question, yet one that encapsulated the deepest fears of the era. The audience did not blink, waiting to see how Musk would respond. He did not answer immediately. A brief silence, not out of hesitation, but of calculation. Then, slowly, Musk crossed his arms, tilting his head slightly as if weighing something far more profound. "You're assuming that what I do is dangerous," he said, his voice calm yet sharp. "But consider this. What happens if I do nothing? If AI, Neuralink, or any of these projects fall into the hands of those who lack responsibility?" Emma did not flinch. She let out a soft chuckle, a knowing smirk forming on her lips. "So, you believe that only you can steer this ship?" "No," Musk replied immediately, "but I know that I understand enough to set boundaries. And more importantly, I do not shy away from responsibility." She remained silent for a few seconds. A few members of the audience nodded slightly. Musk scanned the room before continuing, this time his voice lower, carrying a distinct weight. "We cannot stop progress, but we can steer it. And I would rather be the one at the helm than let it run unchecked without control." The murmurs in the audience grew louder. Like a rising tide, the atmosphere was tense, but not in the way Emma had anticipated. She stared at Musk. He wasn't just answering questions, he was guiding the conversation in his favor. She couldn't let that happen. Not now. Emma blinked once, regaining her composure. She couldn't afford to show any signs of hesitation. "Mr. Musk, that was quite an eloquent response," she said, her voice lowering as she emphasized each word. "But you know, trust is not built on rhetoric. It requires accountability. And let's be honest, this is not the first time you've lost it." She reached into her folder, flipped to a page, and held it up for all to see. The cameras immediately zoomed in, capturing every word on the document in her hand. Tesla's autopilot-related accidents, a workplace environment accused of being toxic, thousands of employees laid off in an instant, controversial decisions on Twitter, now X. She paused, her gaze sweeping across the room. Some people nodded slightly. Whispers emerged from the back rows. "The question here is not just whether you are capable of leading," Emma said, locking eyes with Musk, her stare as sharp as a blade, "but whether someone who has always chosen to break things to move fast should be the one deciding the future of artificial intelligence." A brief silence blanketed the room. Then, Musk smiled, not smugly, not defiantly, but with a subtle knowing expression. "I understand your concerns, Emma." He nodded slightly, appearing thoughtful for a moment before continuing. "Trust is not easily earned. And I'm sure you'd agree with me on this. The media is no better in that regard." A new wave of murmurs rippled through the audience. A few chuckles broke out. Exchanged glances filled with unspoken meaning. Emma felt her pulse quicken slightly. "The media," Musk continued, his voice deep but edged with precision, "doesn't just report news. It creates narratives. It shapes perspectives. And stories hold more power than anything else." Emma tightened her grip on the stack of documents in her hand but maintained a composed demeanor. "Then let's clarify one thing." Musk tilted his head slightly, observing her, his gaze unwavering. "If today we're discussing the control of AI, then perhaps it's also time we ask a bigger question. Who is really controlling what people get to know?" The entire room seemed to freeze. No more murmurs. No more rapid tapping of pens from the journalists. Just a heavy silence hanging between Emma Sinclair and Elon Musk. Emma could feel the shift. This was no longer just an interview, it had become a true confrontation. She took in a slow breath, her sharp eyes studying the man in front of her. A brief second passed. Then she tapped her finger lightly against the table, a small gesture, but a calculated one. Musk noticed immediately. He knew she was preparing her next move. She shifted slightly in her seat, adjusting her posture. Her voice, no longer directly confrontational, now carried a calm and piercing sharpness. "All right, let's set the media aside for a moment." She tilted her head, as if steering the conversation in a new direction. "Let's talk about the future. About what you claim to be your mission." Musk gave a slight nod. He knew what was coming. Emma looked straight at him, unblinking. "You've stated before that in order to ensure humanity's survival, we must go beyond Earth. Become an interplanetary civilization." She gestured with her hand, as if inviting the entire audience into the next question. "But right here on this planet, millions of people are still struggling to make ends meet. Families who can't afford a proper meal. People who work their entire lives yet still can't afford a home." She paused, letting the question settle in everyone's minds. "So tell me, Mr. Musk, do you really want to save humanity? Or are you simply looking for a way to leave it behind?" A long silence followed. All eyes were on Musk. It was a question too sharp, designed to expose the vast gap between his ideals and the harsh reality on the ground. Musk didn't rush to answer. He blinked once, then unexpectedly smiled, a smile without hesitation. "That's a good question." Emma's brow furrowed slightly. That wasn't the reaction she had anticipated. Musk leaned forward, his fingers interlocked. "Emma, are you using a smartphone?" The unexpected question made Emma pause for a brief moment, but she maintained her composure. "Of course." Musk nodded. "Do you know how much it cost to launch the first satellite into space for telecommunications?" Emma didn't answer immediately. Musk didn't wait for a response. "Hundreds of millions of dollars." He gestured toward the audience. "But today, almost anyone can access that technology for just a few $100s." He paused, letting that thought sink into everyone's minds. Progress always starts at an incredibly high cost. But over time, it becomes commonplace and benefits everyone. Once again, the balance of power in the conversation seemed to shift. "I am not abandoning Earth," Musk continued, his voice steady yet undeniably persuasive. "I am opening doors that, one day, everyone will be able to walk through." Emma felt it clearly. She had poured all her sharpness into that question. But Musk had held his ground. And worse, perhaps he was the one now gaining the upper hand. The air in the room was thick with an undeniable silence. Both the audience and Emma Sinclair understood exactly what had just happened. The balance of power had shifted. For the first time throughout the interview, Emma leaned back in her chair. The way she rested lightly against the backrest was subtle, but enough for people to see that she was no longer in control of the conversation. No rebuttal, no counterattack, just a quiet moment of contemplation. Elon Musk remained composed. He didn't need to say anything more. He had won, and everyone in the room could feel it. But Emma was not someone who accepted defeat easily. She was a professional, a master of high-stakes interviews. Though she no longer had complete control, she could still shape how the conversation ended. She took a deep breath, slowly adjusting the stack of notes before her. Then leaned forward once again. This would be her final move. "Mr. Musk," Emma spoke, her voice softer this time but still carrying its usual sharpness. "Tonight, you've shared many thought-provoking perspectives. But before we conclude, I have one final question." Musk remained calm, his gaze locked onto hers. Waiting. Emma did not look away. She met his eyes head-on, carefully choosing each word as she spoke. "There are those who believe that tech billionaires like yourself are not just pioneers," she said, her voice slow but weighted with significance. "That what you are doing is not merely advancing progress, but rather attempting to dictate the fate of humanity. What do you say to those who accuse you of trying to wield a power that only God should have?" A sharp question, carefully designed to corner him. If he dismissed it too easily, he would seem irresponsible. If he reacted too strongly, he would appear as if he were trying to hide something. A perfectly constructed trap. But Musk did not waver. He raised an eyebrow slightly, as if the question intrigued him more than it unsettled him. He leaned back slightly in his chair, a faint smile flickering across his lips before he spoke. "They think I'm trying to become God?" Musk repeated, as if pondering the very meaning of the question itself. He paused for a moment, glancing around the room. A beat passed. Then he let out a soft chuckle, shaking his head. "No, I'm just doing the job of a bridge builder." The studio fell into complete silence. An invisible tension filled the air, as if everyone was holding their breath, waiting for the next moment. Elon Musk sat comfortably in his chair, his eyes gleaming with a hint of defiance. He did not look like a man facing a tough interview, in fact. He looked as if he were enjoying it. Emma Sinclair, the seasoned host, leaned forward slightly, her hands clasped together tightly but with controlled precision. She took a quiet breath before delivering her next question, one that had clearly been carefully prepared. "Do you think you hold too much power?" Her voice was calm, but every word was razor sharp. "Electric vehicles, satellite internet, space exploration, artificial intelligence. Don't you find it concerning that a single individual can dominate so many critical fields?" Musk tilted his head, a glimmer of amusement flashing in his eyes at the provocative nature of the question. He leisurely rested his hands on the armrests before speaking, his tone composed yet firm. "I don't hold anything. I create technology. Whether people use it or not, that's their choice." He shrugged, his expression unwavering. "If Tesla isn't good, people won't buy it. If Starlink doesn't work, no one will use it. Falcon 9 is chosen because it's more reliable than the alternatives. No one is being forced." Emma was not about to let him take the upper hand so easily. She responded swiftly, her gaze even sharper. "But when a company becomes too influential, is it still really a choice? Or does it become dependence?" Musk let out a quiet chuckle, but there was a sharp glint in his eyes. He looked straight at Emma, as if considering something. Then he spoke, not loudly, but with enough weight to silence the entire room. "Do you know what doesn't allow people to have a choice?" Emma blinked but did not answer. The entire studio fell into silence. Musk leaned back in his chair and then dropped a statement that sent shockwaves through the room. "The media." A fleeting moment of surprise crossed Emma's face. Not because she didn't understand his point, but because she hadn't expected him to say it so bluntly, on live television. Some members of the audience murmured quietly. A few raised their eyebrows, while others pressed their lips together in thought. But one thing was clear, everyone was completely drawn into the moment. Emma quickly regained her composure. She adjusted her posture, keeping her voice steady as she closed the show. "Elon Musk, thank you for taking the time to have this conversation today." Musk nodded, his eyes still locked on hers. He didn't need to say much, just one simple but meaningful line. "Thank you, Emma." The broadcast had just ended, but its aftershock spread instantly. Across social media, clips from the interview flooded every platform. From X, formerly Twitter, to TikTok. From YouTube to Reddit, discussions erupted everywhere. The hashtag Musk vs Sinclair trended within less than 20 minutes. Mainstream media outlets released analytical pieces with headlines full of framing. "Elon Musk dodges responsibility, a heated debate on tech power." The tech billionaire dismisses AI concerns. But was his answer convincing? But in other corners of the internet, the narrative was entirely different. Elon Musk just challenged mainstream media on live TV, and they didn't know how to respond. The moment media power was questioned in front of millions of viewers. Musk's supporters praised him for his blunt honesty. His critics argued that it was just a tactic to dodge the real question. Amid the storm of debates, Musk remained true to his style, saying little, but making a massive impact. At 10:35 a.m., he posted a short tweet. "It was just a conversation. But thanks for watching." No further explanation, no arguments, a simple statement. Yet in this context, it was like fuel thrown onto an already blazing fire. Within just 3 hours, the post had garnered 8.5 million likes, hundreds of thousands of shares, and countless heated debates in the comments. The interview had ended, but the wave of controversy was only just beginning. By the next morning, the aftershocks of the televised showdown had spread at an astonishing speed. Every media platform, from newspapers and TV to social networks, was flooded with analysis, debates, and explosive tweets about the confrontation between Emma Sinclair and Elon Musk. The journalist, once regarded as one of the sharpest figures in the media, now found herself under intense scrutiny. Opinion pieces surfaced everywhere. Emma conducted a bold interrogation, but instead of receiving direct answers, she faced an opponent far too skilled. Meanwhile, harsh counter-arguments emerged. Emma thought she was controlling the game, but in reality, she was the one caught in the flow Musk created. He didn't evade, he turned the interview into a victory of his own. By midday, mainstream media could no longer ignore the situation. A major news outlet published a provocative headline. Did Emma Sinclair really control the conversation with Elon Musk? Though it didn't state it outright. Simply posing the question was an implicit admission that the balance of power had shifted. Within a week, the interview had surpassed 50 million views, an astonishing figure. Even compared to past viral media storms, Musk's supporters saw this as undeniable proof that the media could no longer manipulate public opinion as it once did. But his critics countered. Musk is a master at redirecting discussions. He didn't directly answer the toughest questions. Yet he still managed to sway the public in his favor. Despite opposing viewpoints, one fact was undeniable. Musk had walked away from the interview stronger than before. For the longest time, the media had always controlled the narrative. But this time, the balance of power had been challenged, right in front of millions of viewers. After the studio lights dimmed and the crowd dispersed, Emma Sinclair returned to the makeup room and looked straight into the mirror. She saw her own reflection under the dim glow. A face that had walked into the studio with absolute confidence the night before but now carried a deeper, more contemplative expression. She had interviewed seasoned politicians and powerful billionaires. But Elon Musk was entirely different. He hadn't tried to resist her questions, he had used them as leverage to steer the conversation exactly where he wanted it to go. For the first time in years, Emma felt a clear, undeniable truth. She was no longer in complete control of the narrative. She took a deep breath. Failure didn't mean the end. What mattered was what she would learn from this moment. And she knew one thing for certain: this wasn't over. Inside a Tesla Model S, Elon Musk leaned back in his seat, his eyes scanning the headlines flashing across his phone screen. Reports from his media team showed a massive surge in followers. Discussions about him had reached an all-time high. The interview, instead of diminishing his influence, had become a defining moment that reinforced his public persona. Musk gave a faint smile, set his phone down, his gaze distant yet calm and resolute. He didn't need to explain anything. Because sometimes, true power doesn't lie in defending yourself. It lies in how the public reacts after everything has unfolded. In the days that followed, public debate refused to die down. Across forums, social media, and news analysis programs, discussions about the showdown between Emma Sinclair and Elon Musk continued. In-depth articles dissected every detail, from body language and responses to the communication strategies of both figures. Some media experts called it a rare moment where traditional power was challenged on live television. For Musk's supporters, this event only solidified his image as a pioneer willing to confront outdated narratives. At a small cafe, Emma Sinclair sat quietly, reading the commentary on the interview. She had once thought she could fully control the game, but she had underestimated how easily the balance of power could shift. taking a sip of her coffee. She gazed out the window. The streets were still bustling, life moving forward as if nothing had happened. But for her, that interview had marked a turning point, a moment she would remember forever. Journalism is not just about asking questions. It is about observation, adaptability, and the ability to read the flow of a story, even as it shifts right before your eyes. And Emma knew one thing for sure: next time, she wouldn't let herself be swept away so easily. She smiled slightly, picked up a pen, and jotted down a new idea in her notebook. The game was far from over. On the other side of the city, Elon Musk stepped out of his headquarters, his expression calm and composed. He had been through many debates like this before, but each one left a unique mark. His phone lit up with a new notification, an article analyzing how Musk had taken control of the interview. He didn't read it. Instead, he slipped his hands into his coat pockets and walked forward under the rising city lights. He knew one thing for certain: these confrontations would continue. And, as always, he would be ready. If you found this story interesting, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more exciting content. Hit the bell icon to get notified as soon as a new video drops. Thank you for watching. Heart. Pushpin important notice. Small diamond: this story is entirely fictional and does not reflect any real-life events or individuals. Small diamond: its primary purpose is to entertain and convey meaningful messages about media, the power of dialogue, and the influence of high-profile figures. Small diamond: this video is not intended to criticize or attack any individual or organization. Thank you for watching. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Down finger fire.